Millions and millions of people voted for us tonight.
On November 4th, 2020, at the White House, former President Trump did something no U.S. president in history had ever done. He claimed he won an election when he hadn't.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
It wasn't the first time Trump claimed there was fraud in the voting system. He'd been doing that for years. But this time, his lie that he won the 2020 election, which he ultimately lost to Joe Biden, sparked an entirely new phase for the Republican Party and American democracy. Trump, who never conceded to Biden, has kept repeating his lie.
Last year, we had a rigged election, and the proof is all over the place. They always talk about the big lie. They're the big lie. We're just 30 days away from the most important midterm election in American history. We have to make sure that the radical left does not rig or steal your election.
A once fringe claim has now become a top talking point, embraced by many in the GOP, including 2022 candidates.
We had a rigged, stolen election. The facts are there. The forensic audit proves it.
They're trying to put a knife in the heart of our liberty by intentionally and consistently corrupting our election system and demonizing citizens who want to speak truth about it.
And that web of disinformation has led to violence and a new strategy by Trump allies to take aim at the election systems from within ahead of the midterms.
We're taking action. And that action is we're taking over school boards, we're taking over the Republican Party through the precinct committee strategy, we're taking over all the elections. Suck on this.
We have about 30,000 poll watchers already trained. These are going to be the people that we have admitted that are going to actually be counting the ballots.
That precinct strategy is part of the larger GOP approach to elections post-2020. In a report released by the Republican National Committee, which is headquartered here behind me, the group says it is setting out to recruit, train, and organize volunteers to document and report issues they observe. And outside groups, including those who cast doubt on the 2020 election, are organizing their own poll watchers.
Cleta Mitchell, a lawyer for former President Trump who fought to overturn the 2020 election, is heading up an effort dubbed the, quote, Election Integrity Network.
There's much to do to save our election system from those on the left who've spent nearly a decade and invested billions of dollars to manipulate the election system for their partisan advantage.
Election officials in several cities told us questions about voting and false claims have led to a new surge of Republicans applying to work the midterm elections. In Arizona, Turning Point Action, a pro-Trump youth organization that has been accused of spreading disinformation about the election,
Carrie Lake and Blake Masters,
has been going door to door to find people to work the polls. Austin Smith is an organizer with the group. Fueled by suspicion after 2020, Smith is telling potential GOP workers to look out for fraud.
Do you think that President Biden is an illegitimately elected president, or do you think that he's not?
well, I mean, he's president now, so, I mean, I can't say he's not legitimate, but I don't think he got there in a fair process way. Just the ballot harvesting in general here that happened in Arizona. A lot of people will say that it didn't happen, but there's irrefutable evidence that ballot harvesting did happen at drop boxes here in Maricopa County.
Going into the 2022 midterm elections, what are you saying to them that's different?
Part of it is to keep your eyes open, keep your head on a swivel.
Smith insists that questioning the election is patriotic.
The most American thing you can do is to question things, to question authority. You're allowed to do that in a free country, and the people who don't like that, I don't think that they're coming from a good place.
So do you think that the people who broke into the Capitol on January 6th saying that they were trying to stop the steal, that they were wrong?
Oh, of course they were wrong. I mean, that's a public building. It's like, but look, they're being persecuted now. They're being persecuted as political prisoners. So I think that's wrong. What they did was wrong. Not all of them have seen their day in court.
Well, you're saying that you want to preserve America for another generation, and there are some who are saying what you're doing is hurting America and might not preserve the democracy for another generation.
And that's their opinion, but that's it. So.
And you think they're wrong?
I mean, we all have opinions, right? So I think they're wrong and they think I'm wrong. So that's America.
I was very concerned the last election.
We spoke to a number of other Republican Arizona voters who sounded off on why they want to get involved as election workers.
Sure that the election's done fairly and there's no cheating going on. Well, I'm going to be watching drop boxes too, because those drop boxes are out for a month before the election day. So I'm going to go camp out and with my ice chest and my camera and my sidearm. Because it's just not America.
I just want to make sure that it's a clean election and that there's no unusual things going on.
There were too many anomalies to say that it was fair and free.
Arizona election officials tell us they welcome bipartisan participation in the voting process, but they're worried about nefarious actors infiltrating their systems or workers challenging votes because of political disagreement.
Okay, so now we are going back to our warehouse.
Scott Jarrett showed us the multiple security measures at this election facility where votes in Maricopa County will be counted.
This is a secure room where the ballots will ultimately get counted. We have checks and balances throughout, bipartisan representation, oversight from the political parties. And all of that information is available for those individuals that might be skeptical to come and find out more.
When I think about the 2022 midterms, I'm kept up at night by the continued spread of misinformation and disinformation.
Bill Gates says he is deeply troubled by his party's embrace of election deniers and lies.
I'm frustrated by, and what is tearing at the foundations of our democracy, are people who know better, who are raising questions in bad faith. It needs to stop. Our democracy is on the line.
Gates himself has been targeted by Trump supporters who say the election in Arizona was rigged.
Unfortunately, for the last couple of years, my family and I have been subject to various threats, and I know we're not alone in that. Elections officials from across the country have.
And he isn't the only Republican in a key state who told us about the toll these lies are taking.
What would you say to former President Trump if he was sitting here right now? What would you say to him?
So I can't answer this question, I'm sorry.
Thousands of miles away in Philadelphia, Al Schmidt can still remember the moment former President Trump called Schmidt a, quote, so-called Republican who was being used big time by the fake news media. It was November 11th, 2020, and Schmidt, then the sole Republican on the Philadelphia County Board of Elections, was busy tallying ballots.
After the former president tweeted at me by name, as silly as that sounds, that's when threats that had begun before that became much more specific and much more graphic and really began targeting my family.
What would you say to former President Trump directly if he was sitting here right now?
I would want him to know what my family went through as a result of his lies targeting me. And I would like to hear an explanation for how he could possibly justify doing what he did as a human being when he was really just trying to come up with an excuse for his own failure.
Schmidt was targeted for not echoing the MAGA conspiracy theory that the election was being stolen and for not questioning the integrity of the vote count.
Well, I was a Republican before Donald Trump was a Republican. It's important that we stand up against these lies and that we not surrender the Republican Party.
In other battleground states, like Georgia,
the voting systems for the county of Gwinnett,
election workers have also been targeted.
Previously, we were not visible people. And because Georgia is now a battleground state, things have changed. There are more eyes on us. We are not actors. We are regular people. It's scary. We are scared. We get scared of that.
A lot of threats, wishing death upon me, telling me that, I'll be in jail with my mother, and saying things like, be glad it's 2020 and not 1920. It's turned my life upside down. I don't go to the grocery store at all. I haven't been anywhere at all. I've gained about 60 pounds. I just don't do nothing anymore.
But while Trump's lies have hurt many election workers and officials, NBC News found that 45 states have GOP candidates on the ballot that have questioned or denied the results of the 2020 election. 227 House nominees, 18 gubernatorial nominees, 17 Senate nominees, and 10 nominees for Secretary of State. And we've gotten a glimpse at what Republican leaders are saying about recruitment efforts.
We want to use that same program with election integrity this time around to recruit and train and place volunteers to watch every aspect of every election to make sure that Democrats aren't committing fraud.
Truly, it's going to be an army, right? We are going to try to recruit lawyers. We're going to have more lawyers than have ever been recruited, because let's be honest, that's where it's going to be fought, right?
Meanwhile, post-2020, state Republican officials have been using their power to pass new laws that critics say will restrict voting access, make it easier to overturn elections, and criminalize voting in unfair ways.
In Florida, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill in April to create an election police force dedicated to pursuing voter fraud. So far, at least 20 people have been arrested by the unit.
When you don't enforce your laws, you encourage more bad behavior.
What do you say to critics who say that the Office of Election Crimes and Security, what some have called the election police force, that was created to establish a false narrative, a political narrative about a problem that doesn't really exist?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just completely inaccurate and belies the truth that there are people that vote that aren't entitled to vote. And every single person that votes that shouldn't undermines someone the legal vote of someone else.
Byrd said the unit is looking at the whole state, but he added that there will be more issues in bigger counties like Miami-Dade, Broward, Hillsborough, and Duval.
So it's just a coincidence right now that you're starting with mostly Democratic, heavily populated areas, would you say?
I know what you're trying to say, and that's not what I'm saying, is that's where the volume is. I mean, Miami-Dade County has 1.5 million voters.
So when critics look at that and say you're going after Democratic-led counties, Democratic-leaning counties, your response is?
Absolutely false.
But advocates say those arrested did not know they were breaking the law, and that in many cases government officials had sent them voting materials that allowed them to cast ballots. A number of lawyers for those arrested told us they are fighting the charges in court.
None of these folks should have been arrested in the first place.
Neil Voles is working with those arrested.
Our voter verification process on the front end isn't working the way that it should, so that there are people who are registering to vote, getting voter ID cards from the state, and then months or years later, the same state is arresting them. That makes no sense.
So you're going to print the ballot?
Now, with a few weeks to go before the election, poll workers across the country, like these in Georgia, are getting ready.
I love working in elections. Poll workers are human beings. This is very, very important. They are old citizens and doing it out of civic duty. That's it. They are not here for the money. They're not here to change anybody's minds. They're here to do their job.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.